Welcome to a very special episode of Epochal Growth. I'm your host, Sarah Caminiti, and I am so happy that you're here. Today's conversation is not only the second to last episode of Season 1 of Epochal Growth, but it's being released on my birthday. So it feels like the perfect time to reflect on growth and leadership and the power of transparency. This has been such a remarkable year. I've been spending a lot of time reflecting on this incredible year and this journey that I've been on with all of you. And I'm just so proud of this moment, and I'm really excited to see where 37 takes me. Joining me today is Craig Crisler, CEO and co-founder of Support Ninja. Craig shares his insights on creating value in business, building authentic relationships, and leading with humility. Whether you're a seasoned leader or you're just starting out, there's something here for everyone. All right, let's dive in.
Awesome. Well, brief introduction on me. So I'm Craig Crisler, CEO of Support Ninja. One of the three founders of Support Ninja. I would say I'm a serial kind of startup guy. That's been my career my whole life. I've been doing startups. 12 companies, 4 exits.
Oh my gosh.
Really seen the worst and the best of it in terms of all of that stuff. So I learned a lot along the way. Interesting snippet. I always tell people, I don't mind sharing it. I'm in recovery. I've been in recovery for a long time.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And so that's a huge part of who I am now, and who I was too. It actually is part of who I was. It's part of my story. And so it's an interesting and informs a lot of what I do. But my focus has always been, and what I love about business is people. I just fundamentally enjoy working with people, and the interaction and the way in which you create value for people and work with people. I thoroughly enjoy that. That's the part that excites me the most. The product, the service. I mean, all of those companies that I've been with and helped work on, and so many different types. But the one consistent thing was people. That was always consistent in every single business I was in. So I love working with and inspiring and hopefully working for people to make them better. And so that just inspires me every single day.
Gosh, what a great career trajectory to acknowledge the thing that you love the most and then build around it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. It cuts back to this point. So there's a point in my life where I wasn't sure, because I was a musician. So my first company I ever did, I started a record company. I was 15, and in the Bay Area, California, and it was great. It was fantastic. It was fun, but it was just weird timing. But what was interesting about it, I had gotten to this point in my career where I didn't feel like it was. I wanted to be a rock star, but I wasn't. I knew being a rock star is like being Michael Jordan. It's like 1 in a million. It's really hard to do. And so there was a point in my career, and I was talking to a mentor, and this was in a company that I have back in Hawaii. And I was talking to a mentor, and I really had this kind of is business art? It was this thing that I felt. And I was like, is business really art? Is it, am I creating something? Because I think I had pipe dreams of being a musician still, even then, and my mentor at the time, he was like, how do you know the interactions that you do with people, the way in which you look at the way businesses run and create value for people? How do you not see that as art? It's hard to not realize that is truly art. And so from that, that was my oh, okay, so it is art. What I do in business is art. And what I do with people it's art. It's just it's not what you traditionally think of as art,
Wow. I really love that concept. There's so much purpose behind it, because you have to be intentional when you create, and you have to be thoughtful when you create, and each interaction is an opportunity to create something that lasts with people, just like art sticks with you and lasts with you. And that's really beautiful. What a great thing for your mentor to connect those dots with you.
Well, and it's that thing of where, if you're a leader, or if you're just working in a company, people bless you with their time, right? And they give you this, portion of their life, right? And if you're not doing the best that you can to make that portion of their life meaningful in some way, then you're probably not doing the best job that you could be doing to make it work. And that's where that intention, like that kind of push towards like, how do you make it? And it cuts back to, I was just talking to a friend about this. We were talking about how like, you don't ever date people who are rude to waitresses or waiters.
Yep.
Like it's like this, like a common thing, right? Like we just don't do that, especially for folks who work in CX like you and I do. Like we definitely know that. Like we're just like, no,
hard pass.
Yeah, exactly. and we were talking about this, and it comes to that intentionality thing. Like I think where it comes down to that point of where you say, okay, well, that person who's working, whatever they're doing, you're taking their time too, right? Even the people that you're trying to create value for as a customer. And so you want it to be purposeful, and you want it to be full of intention, and you want it to actually create value. And if it doesn't do that, then, or you demean it in some way, then you're actually demeaning the value creation that you both could be doing together. So if you're rude to a waiter, you may not get the best food. And so wouldn't you rather work together to create a value for each other, and like build, a better meal for yourself?
Yeah, I got the chills there. That was really good. Yeah, it's so true though. It's and working in CX, we do have a very different headspace than I think most people do. I say when I'm talking about anyone coming on to this podcast, I say that you're gifting me with your time, because that is what you're doing, and I love that that you expressed that in such a similar vein. And for something as easy as going to a restaurant, everybody is a customer. Everybody is a customer in some way, shape, or form. And you do have an opportunity to help them be as successful as they possibly can be, without that like taking away from you and your experience and your journey. It is an opportunity to collaborate and just learn. And I've had some of the coolest conversations with strangers that are my Uber driver or my waitress or someone who's a coffee barista at a coffee shop, because I make it a purposeful moment to engage and connect. And gosh, now that I think about it, I just got a flash. I went to a movie by myself, and there was one other woman in the movie theater, and she ended up coming over and sitting with me. We ended up talking for 2 hours. The movie started over again because we were still in the movie theater. And I ended up helping her with a mentorship program for the YMCA that she works at. And like,
amazing.
And the YMCA was in Washington, D.C. And it was just like, she happened to be here for a conference. She happened to have a minute, and she happened to go to this random movie in the middle of the day. And you rob yourself of so much opportunity to explore and to grow and just take a chance by not approaching things the way that you described, Craig, the way that you do approach things. And I think that's a really important thing for people to think about when they go into the world.
Right. Well, and it's that, on the, thinking about it from that CX perspective. And I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of like what we think of as good CX is like, really it's about the co-creation of value, right? Like between a customer and whoever's, performing the CX, right? Like you're actually trying to co-create value with this client or customer or whatever it is. And it's that approach that, that's where you see, I think that's where you see excellence in CX, right? Like is the people who are doing it that way and thinking about it in that way and talking about how, is the product solving the problem? And if it's not solving the problem, how do we make it solve the problem? And, brand and all that other stuff, and the ones that do it extremely well are really about this collaboration of these like random instances of two people getting together to try to solve a problem potentially, specifically like on a CS side or something like that. But, like they're actually trying to co-create like a solution, and approaching it that way. And it's funny because then you can definitely see when that doesn't work, right? Like because then there's no co-creation of value. Like, then you're just like, okay, well, we're just monotonously going to go through this, and maybe you'll get value out of it or not, client, but then you're wondering, then it's not shocking that people are like, oh, well, CS is, customer experience scores are really low right now. It's like, well, probably because people aren't approaching it from a co-creation of value perspective of being like, how do we make this better for both of us? Because, and I'm sure you know this. I mean, like with Support Agent, we have thousands of agents doing all kinds of different things, and to inspire them, it is about this concept of co-creation of value between us and the end user that's on the phone or on the chat or whatever it is that we're doing with them, and that inspires the agent to do better work, and hopefully inspires the customer to be excited about what they're working on, but that kind of inspiration is much better for folks who are in the CX space versus it being just like, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to do this script the most efficiently to make it where I can get you off the phone in a certain amount of seconds.
Yes, it's transactional. It's transactional, is meaningless. You are, in doing it that way, you are telling the customer that you don't value their success enough to take the time. And that all goes back to leadership of, are you building a foundation that is rooted in value and rooted in space and pause and contemplation? And are you allowing them the space to feel safe enough to take time and care and see what happens when you take that information and you collaborate with another department and things start to change for the better there? Because those are all seeds that need to be planted and watered and watered and watered and weeded and all of these things. You have to tend to this garden forever. And when you do, holy cow, that's magic.
It is. Well, and it's like what popped into my head was, I was thinking about what, like one of my big things, and this has been the same for all companies that I've worked in, is that I work for the people who work with me, right? So even as CEO, like I work for them. Like I don't have a job unless they do theirs.
It's true.
And so, my job is dependent upon their success and the ability for, me to be able to either be the grease and not the glue, or, inspire, or, whatever the case may be. And it's interesting because if, his kind of historically, when you look at the ways in which people kind of think about leaders, it's like this kind of like, you got to mandate and do this other stuff. And honestly, I love being the stupidest person in the room.
Same.
Because there's people who are way smarter than me on my team, like way smarter than me. I didn't even do outsourcing before Support Ninja. I have no background in outsourcing.
No way.
None. Yeah. And so everything I learned from hiring incredible people that know a lot more about this industry than I do, and looking at and seeing the ways other people are doing it and learning from them and learning from clients about ways in which we can do it better, and being that sponge to absorb what's happening and figure it out. I think it gives me a unique perspective on the space, but I think more importantly, like it is that perspective, to your point of being a leader, of like, if you're trying to facilitate people's growth and trying to make sure you're kind of creating value, co-creating value consistently over and over and over again, it is about not necessarily being that, person who's like, I'm the smartest, I'm going to tell you what to do and all this other stuff. It's more about, well, you probably have some smart ideas that I'm not aware of. So why don't you tell me those first? Because I don't know,
Yeah. Yeah. It makes a huge difference in the types of conversation you get to have. It's really special when it actually works and people do understand why you're asking the types of questions that you're asking, and you have to prove yourself and your value to them over and over and over again. But I gotta ask, because outsourcing is a beast. Outsourcing is not for the faint of heart. What brought you in your journey to this?
Well, yeah. So it's a funny story. Well, it's not funny. I mean, I guess it's just like like most of my career has been one of like stumbling into things, like where it's like I, meet people that have a great idea and then we start something. But what happened is I was working with an AI company in Austin, Texas. And, I always joke when people say AI hasn't been around a long time. This was 9 years ago. AI has been around a really long time. You just didn't realize it was there. That's how good it was. But I was working with an AI company. I'd helped them raise a round of funding, and I was transitioning away from them after helping them raise this round. And so I was had just recently transitioned out. And Connor and Cody, who are the other founders of Support Ninja, they had just started working on Support Ninja. And they said, hey, can you come over here and help us try to figure out this outsourcing thing? And I was like, I have no background in outsourcing. I've used outsourcers. I've used BPOs. Like I've done that, but I never, this kind of business never run. And they're like, well, that's probably what we want. Just come over and let's talk. And then from there, that started a journey of me, kind of visiting all kinds of outsourcing providers, making friends with, the big players in the space and visiting their sites. I will say, honestly, like the more I visited the big players in the space, the more I realized what I didn't want to do versus what I did want to do, to be brutally honest.
Surprising.
No fault to them. I understand the business model of what they're trying to accomplish. It's just not the model we want. But that was the kind of start. And then from there, we just kind of kept growing and growing and growing. And that's why I came as director of customer services or something like that. Basically, it was just kind of jack of all trades. I mean, there's 3 of us in an apartment in the early days in East Austin. Yeah, and then from there, it grew to where it is now, in 5 countries and 2,000 plus agents and, all that stuff. But a lot of it, bumps and bruises and just learning a lot along the way. But the fascinating thing for me is that, and this whole process is that I love Support Ninja primarily because it hits on that thing I was talking about before, is that I just love the people part of it. Like the people aspect of this work, how and what ways we inspire people to work and be excited about work and do work for clients that they're not hired by, but that we support them to do great work for them. It hits all the buttons of things that I just really enjoy about business. And as such, I've been thoroughly inspired in this work. Like I just really love working in this space, even as broken as BPO is right now. I still enjoy working in this space because I think there's folks who are doing great work in this space that are the change agents that I think will actually make kind of this, for lack of a better term, worldwide talent, and the way in which we work together collaboratively to find the best people across the world. Like it will make us all better.
Yeah. No, I do agree. I do agree. Have you found as Support Ninja has grown, because as a BPO, you have a really cool opportunity to show these companies that hire your services what good looks like and what care and time and the impact of that, like what this actually looks like. But often that isn't what happens with a BPO. It is speed, it is numbers, it is all of the things that we know about BPOs. But with your mindset of the co-creation of value, how has that translated to setting up all of these teams throughout the world to kind of shift their focus in that regard?
Yeah, well, I will say it's a bit easier for us in the sense of that the folks who come and work with us, the Gates Foundation is one of our clients, the Midjourneys of the world. Like these folks who come and work with us are usually coming in from a place of not being like, we're, a massive publicly traded company and we just want you to be able to, deal with telco, nonsense, that we get or whatever. So, I think we're benefited to the fact that a lot of our clients that come to us and they want to look at what we're doing compared to like maybe a traditional BPO, they're a little bit more ready to have those conversations than maybe some of major enterprise clients were. Although I will say I think there's a shift that's occurring in the space in relationship to this. And thankfully, I think a lot of it's being spurred on by AI. But I do think there's always this kind of push-pull between, in the BPO space of cost effectiveness and value, right? Yeah. And I think to your point, average handle times and first response, and like all these kind of measures you put in place, as a BPO, is whether or not you're doing good. Like getting and talking to clients about, okay, what are you actually trying to accomplish? Like, what is your CX? Like, what is your brand voice? What are these, we have these kinds of conversations with our clients and say, like, when they come in and be like, what do you want to actually accomplish? And a lot of times it's interesting. They don't know or it's inconsistent. I had this funny, like I was talking to somebody about this the other day where I think CX is kind of like the middle child in a family of good product and engineers is the firstborn. CX is the middle child and CS is the last, right? And so CX is kind of like the forgotten kid, like of, maybe people don't, everyone loves him. He's great, but, not really thought about, we don't worry about the CX side of it. We just want to know that CS and product's okay. And meanwhile, CX is floating around being, not getting paid attention to, not getting loved in the same way as the other two, or the youngest and the oldest are. And it's because I think, spurring our clients to have those conversations, to your point, is definitely like a big part of what we try to do, and try to get folks to really think about it. Because, we have clients who come to us that they'll say they want to do this for efficiency. And then we'll say, well, is that the best for your customer? Like, do you think that that's the best value that you're creating for your customer? And there are definitely certain things where efficiency is the most important thing for them. Like speed at which you do something is good. And that's a part of their brand. That's great. But it definitely is sometimes, I will say, pulling teeth because, again, CX is kind of a forgotten child. Like it doesn't, the process of all of this, where it should be like an integrated part of everything that happens in an organization,
I think that is the perfect way to describe CX though, because I think we are a very difficult thing for people to wrap their head around, because the nuances and the complexity that goes into actually caring for the customer experience in a way that impacts many different places of the business makes the middleness of CX really important, because it is a bridge and it is the source of so much information, but that's overwhelming. That is incredibly overwhelming if that is not your space. And to think about, this is me doing a hypothetical of people outside of the CX space. Like, you started a business, you're laser focused on like nailing down the UX, and you've got all these engineers, you're like 90% engineers in your company, and you're just building and building and building and innovating. And the mindset can very easily skew to, well, our product is so incredible, it'll speak for itself. And then when you start asking questions about, well, what happens here and what happens here, and what are you going to do when this happens, and how is this flow going to build within your pipeline, and your how are you going to shift when your plan for the year doesn't work because your customer is talking about all of this stuff. And often those conversations end and then they just kind of continue on their journey. So I think that's a perfect analogy. And I got to know, like, what do you hope people think about, reflect on before they enter into these conversations with a BPO?
I think I hope that, well, specifically they're coming to us for CX. Like if they're looking at, or CS, most of the time they're coming to us pants on fire, like we just need help. But, one of the big things that I really hope that they think about and kind of take some time to understand is, and they've already actually, this is the hard part, they've already done the work. Like if you built a product or you built a SaaS, whatever it is that you're doing, like you have this thing that is driving value to a consumer, right? Whatever that consumer is, business or end user. And so you've built something that actually has value. okay, so wait, how do you want that value to be articulated in the way in which you interact with them after they have the product? Like, how do you want that value to continue to be created after they have the product? And so think about that before you get into these conversations with your strategic partner at BPO, because, if you're traditional BPO, like they'll be like, this stuff has to be all nailed down. They'll just tell you like, look, you have to have all your scripts. You have to tell me exactly what it is you want me to tell you. All of these things you have to say to be able to do this job right. But for us, we're like, well, we want to make sure we're co-creating value with you. So if we're not doing that, like, tell us what good looks like. Tell us what, an excellent experience for your end user feels like. Have that thought, even if it's rough, before you come and talk to us, because we can hone it in and make it great. But because you've already done the work, you know what the value of the product is, but how do you want that value to continue to be driven into that product in the next phase of that product after they have it, And if you have that stuff, I think, nailed down, I think most, and you see those businesses that have that nailed down, like it's an experience after the product's delivered that you're like, oh, okay, well, this is what this feels like. This is what good CX, that's what people say, it's good CX. It's like, oh yeah, this is what it feels like. And it's because they're saying, okay, we're constantly driving this value chain with you, of like being like, it's not just when the product's delivered, it's everything that occurs in that value chain.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think that's a good reflection point to set yourself up, even if you're just kind of starting to strategize of what's next for us before you find the next solution. Understand what value means to your product and how to keep it going after they hit subscribe or after they download or whatever it is that your service is. For having founded and worked in so many different companies over the years, how has that all set you up for Support Ninja and for staying here and just growing this space?
Yeah. Well, I think one is I kind of have a unique how do I put this? So I've been in most of the companies I've worked in have been very different. There's only kind of been one vertical. I had a couple of ed tech companies, but for the most part, it's been very varied what I've done. And I think though what has been helped me set up me well for Support Ninja. This is kind of the selfish part of me being involved in Support Ninja with Connor and Cody, was that I get all the stuff I love about business, which is that watching companies grow and watching people grow and watching people develop product and like put it on the market and see if the world likes it, and all that stuff, all of that excitement I get to be a part of in, 240 plus companies. And that is amazing to like see that stuff, to be able to have those conversations and with these, sometimes founders, sometimes they're big and they're rolling something new out and so having had that varied experience allows me to kind of say, okay, well, if anything, I understand where they're at, but then more importantly, I understand that it's going to be different for everybody. And so how can we build something that's flexible enough and adaptable enough and drive enough value to them that they feel like we're a good partner in this value creation? And so I think that part has set me up well for that. And so in terms of working with Support Ninja. But also I think too, going back to what I was talking about before in relationship to the fact of like, I don't mind being the baby in the room, like not really understanding everything and I'm just absorbing. Like, because I almost, like one of the startups, we were doing military tech. I'm not a military guy. I never went in the military, but we did military tech and we sold it to Raytheon. And so like no background in that, but figured it out, and kind of went through that process. And so that ability for me to look and kind of absorb whatever's there in a way and understand how and what ways can we build something that will help in this process, I think positions me well. It's almost like this kind of, on one side, it's like I have the ability to have experience in a lot of different verticals. And then the other side of it's being like, well, I'm also okay being pretty dumb and learning on the fly quickly. to understand what it is that we can help with.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that that is your approach to all of these different adventures that you've gone on. I feel like you are a very kindred spirit in that regard, because I also find myself entering into companies that I know nothing about, and I almost prefer it because I'm able to, and I usually do stay as removed from totally understanding the product as I can, while still building and leading, because I'm able to see things from a customer perspective that you can't when you understand all the nuances, and when you understand what it should be doing and can make those quick adjustments and assumptions of where you need to click, or something like that. And you can connect on such a deeper level with a customer when you're able to feel the confusion, because you then go through the process yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, you're right, this doesn't make any sense. This
Yeah.
is valid. I think that we need to look into this. And to have you going through all these companies and allow yourself to be curious, and allow yourself to be to just be somebody that is new to the space. That's a vulnerable thing to do over and over again, is perfect for a BPO, where you're interacting with very varied types of companies that you don't necessarily need to understand the nuances for, in order to provide them a quality support experience.
Right. Well, and it's in this space too. What's interesting is I think it's intriguing because like we've been in RFPs and stuff like that where they really want us to kind of stick to the rules and just respond the way that they want us to respond. But like I'm always like, well, do we have to? Like, is this real? Like we're trying to solve a problem, like and the problem probably has a solution that may be simpler than we're thinking it is. Like, and just because it's always been done that way, does it really need to be done that way? Like, is there a different way? And so it's funny how many times with some of these RFPs, like where we'll respond and they'll be like, "We love you, we just can't figure you out." And I'm like, well, it's not that complicated. Like, we're driving towards a solution that will drive value to you, like not necessarily the solution that you've preconceived as the best solution for this problem. Based on procurement rules or whatever the case may be, we're trying to get to a solution that's going to drive value to you. But that goes back to like how old this industry is. It's just it acts like an old industry at times, and I'm much more of like a startup guy where it's like, hey, let's try something new. Like, what's the worst that could happen? Like, it's better to try and fail and then learn and then do consistently something poorly. That's what is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Yeah. So
Yep.
if it's not working now the way that you've built it, why don't we try something different?
Yeah, that's an important mindset to share with companies that do find themselves locked into the safe route. I think that's something with leadership that I have since I started building and leading teams. I wanted to do what I never really saw. And I wanted to understand why I never really saw these inclusive, supportive, encouraging environments last. Because it's not to say the people that I've worked with in the past didn't try, but it's so much easier when things are hard to go back to what you knew worked for other people that you saw, or at least like they survived it at the end of the day. Like you've got the framework. You saw this like the last 6 companies, that the boss turns into, a big brother type person, and starts like nitpicking everything you do, and being very like gatekeepy and defensive, and it's very easy to get that instant head shift into like survival power hoarding. And I think that that translates exactly into businesses as well. If you don't have somebody there constantly saying, no, no, we're not doing this. No, you're not going back to that old way. We already said that old way was bullshit. And I know things suck right now. I know things suck, but let's acknowledge that it sucks. Let's acknowledge to our team that we understand that it sucks, and we trust them and we appreciate them and we value them enough to bring them into the shit with us and figure out how we're going to make it better. And I would love to know, building a company with values that they seem like your business values connect very well to your personal core values, and you found this really nice alignment. But that must be it must be very difficult at times to keep that path visible and stay on it.
Yeah.
Because it takes work.
Yeah, it takes discipline, and like, I don't even know if discipline's the right word. I actually think it comes back to transparency. Like, it comes back to that concept of saying, like, even when, as a leader, let's say you have to make a tough choice, and there's some change that needs to occur, and ultimately, because you're in the seat you're in, you have to make a decision, and ultimately it's your name that has to sign or whatever it is. And I think, like, having that level, if you abide by your values and really truly believe in it, like, then be transparent with everybody and tell them, like, this is why I made this decision, or this is why this decision was made as a group, or, this is why I agreed with the decision that was made, and owning it, and, warts and all, I remember one time, this was in the early days of Support Ninja, like, I made a mistake, like, it was a mistake. It was a straight up mistake. And I remember I went into a town hall and I told everybody I made a mistake. And I remember there was one of the agents in the Philippines. I saw them and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm okay." Like, but it was a true caring, because they were like, they were so not used to like somebody saying out loud that, and owning, error. And being able to say, like, this is my problem and this is the mistake I made and I own it, and but I said, yeah, I'm fine, it's great, like, this is what, honestly, like, if you have the same thing, you should own it too. It's okay, like, we're all human, like, there's nothing, I used to say, I do this thing called a Not So Friday update, where I do like a video thing for the team every Friday, and it's part of me being more transparent, just like kind of what happened this week, shout outs, bringing in guest stars, the whole line. And it's funny because, I used to say all the time, like, I can guarantee all of you one thing, that I at some point will screw up. That I can guarantee. The rest of it, I can't really guarantee, but I can guarantee at some point I will actually screw this thing up. And I think that ownership of transparency allows the company to flourish, because then at that point, hopefully people follow that model of saying, like, oh yeah, it's okay, Craig made a mistake, I can say it too. It's like, because I'm human and I'll make a mistake,
Yep.
But transparency to me, it like cuts through everything. It's one of those things, honestly, like, that's one of the biggest lessons I think I learned in my recovery, was that, in getting sober, was that I could be and should be as transparent and real to me as I possibly can, because it's much harder to keep a lie or to hide.
Yeah, it is.
It's so much more difficult than it's just as being me, and being human and warts and all. And like, that part, I think, was like a huge turning point for me in my recovery, and especially as me as a leader in my career, was being able to see, like, oh, I can just be Craig, and people will still like me,
Yep.
as people still respect me, and even if I make a mistake, they'll still respect me, and and I don't need to try to pretend to be something I'm not, and it's funny, I think it drives my board crazy though at times, because I'll be talking to somebody, I'll say, well, to be overly transparent, and they'll just like lay it out, and they'll be like, you did that out loud? I'm like, well, why not? I mean, what's the worst that could happen? Someone's going to say it to somebody else. Like,
It's true.
it doesn't, they love me, but at times they're like, come on, Craig, really?
No,
So,
well, it's an adjustment, like,
right.
and you showing your team and all of the people that work with Support Ninja, like, no, I'm just going to say, I'm not going to like preface it. I'm not going to like change my tone. This is just, I'm having a conversation with you, and I'm telling you, I did not do something that I wanted to do. Like, the outcome was not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be different. I made a mistake. I screwed up, and we're still a company. We're still alive. We're still afloat.
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
still here. I didn't get fired. And that means that you now can say, this didn't go well. I messed this up. And now you can ask, hey, why did this not go well? Where in this process did things go awry? I scare many of the people that I work with because I always ask, why did you do what you did the way that you did it? And that's not in any sort of negative way. I'm not trying to like get you into a gotcha moment. I want you to actually walk me through the whole thought process so that I can figure out what moment things did not go as planned, because it's my job to make you confident enough to go on this journey and have the outcome work out the way that you hoped that it would work out. And once people start to understand, oh, wait a second, when I do acknowledge this, like I don't get in trouble. Like, we actually like put a fix in place for this. It's so cool because you're able to fix things in the moment with the context and build off of it. And so you're providing such a gift by proving it.
Well, I love that question. I must steal it. Like, because it definitely cuts through the noise, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's all kinds of noise, whether it be in our head or it's just like ridiculous, and it cuts through the noise and it says like, show me what you did. It reminded me of, we had an agent. They were working with one of our clients, and he was just doing like 2 times what everyone else was doing at a quality that was phenomenal. Like, and we were like, we actually thought he was like, at first we were like, is he cheating? Like, like what's going on? Because it's just, he was far and above anybody else. And so we sit down and we're like, hey, show us what you're doing. And it turns out he had like built a program to help his work.
Oh my gosh.
And so he did it, and he built this program, and that program ended up being used by the rest of the team. Like, we ended up rolling it out to the rest of the team. We rolled it out to the client, like all this other stuff, because it made it more efficient and better. Right. But unless we had asked the why, to be like, and of course, the noise jumped us to the conclusion of being like, this guy hacking, like, like, is he, have like a keystroke helper or something like that. But he had figured out a way to work around to create value. And like, even in the mistakes or the wins, like him, like in those analysis of like asking the why, like you talked about, like, you get so much, like, you can, that transparency of peeling back all of the onion layers and trying to get down to the core of it. You're like, oh, okay. So this is the
Yep.
problem,
Yep.
and it's not you that's the problem. It's this thing,
No.
like, it's maybe a step,
Yeah.
maybe, a tool or whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
very, I would love to say it's easier to point fingers, but like, it's actually a lot harder to prove that. And like, in fact, I think it's, I don't know, it's detrimental to teams if all you're doing is pointing fingers, like, because then it doesn't help. Like,
No. Well, it creates a hostile environment for
yeah,
what?
for
Like,
what? Yeah, like, it doesn't. There's no value in it. Like, there's,
oh,
it's, point the. I mean, I was in a meeting once and we were talking about something. I said, well, point the finger at me. I don't care. Like,
yeah.
like, it's fine. Like, if you guys want to point the finger at somebody, point at me. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But let's talk about the problem. Like,
Yeah.
let's
Right.
dive in.
Right. Like, get the pointing done. Like,
Yeah.
get that cup full for you, and then now let's just move on, because there's much more to this that is productive, and it's not that.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's. I'm glad to hear that there's a company that promotes error at scale.
Yeah.
And as a win. And when I say error as a win, I just mean acknowledging error, because we are all trying to do our best. And the second that you start thinking, the second you start removing the people from the events or just any of it, the second you remove the people, you lose that piece that is, and we are all just people trying to do our best. Obviously, this person is not going to like create some bizarro like takedown plan with this one little error that they did. There's a reason behind it. Let's figure out what the reason is.
Yeah. Behaviors don't happen in a vacuum. Like it just, it's built on something and it's based on something. And, but yeah. And I will say, I mean, it is one of those things. It's definitely an uphill battle. Like at times, where you're trying to get people to get comfortable with that. And it's not always easy, and,
No.
And it's also hard. I think people, humility, one of our values is always be humble, and it's humility is just a tough one, right? It's just a really tough, kind of position to put yourself in, to be able to say that, I'm fallible, you're fallible, we're all fallible. Like we're all gonna, it's, and we all don't think that we're the best, like we just think collectively we're better. And, it's hard to like kind of, I used to in the early days of Support Ninja, when managers would come in from traditional BPOs, like they would be like, team leaders or site directors or, whatever. I would say, okay, well, the first couple of weeks, I'm going to untrain you.
Yes.
Everything that you learned in terms of hierarchical management process and yelling at agents and all that stuff. I said, I'm gonna rehab you. You're going to be better when we're done. Because I don't want you to be that way anymore. I want you to be okay with, coaching, and I want you to be okay with inspiring and like, being a servant leader and, all that stuff. And, but still, yeah, it's to your point earlier, people, they'll default back when the pressure's on. Why'd you do that? You don't need to do that, man. It's okay. Like, let's try this way. Let's go back to the way we believe would be better for all of us.
Yep. Little reset. It's a little reset. I feel like I could talk to you, Craig, for literally 70,000 hours, and I'm so ticked off that the time is what it is. But so that I make sure I don't go over too far as planned, I end every episode by asking our guests, what era do you find yourself in, or what era are you moving into? And so, Craig, I would love to know, what's your era?
I was thinking about this in terms of music, in terms of kind of music. And I was thinking about that. I'm kind of in the era and, I was thinking about the Beatles, actually. I was thinking about the Beatles. And there was that era, like right before they like kind of broke up, like where, but it was that the last couple of albums, like Let It Be. And like, there's like the last little kind of snippets of time there where and I kind of feel like I'm in that era of being like, I've found something that I thoroughly enjoy, and that, and I've hit this stride in my life of being completely happy with the work that I'm doing. I may not love it all the time, but I'm always happy with what I'm doing. That, and I found that, it's like I cut the band's like just at a hum, where we're just like, we may not be always successful, but we're just, we've locked in and we're doing great and stuff like that. And with Support Ninja and this company specifically, it hits on all the things I love about business, which is people. And it just really just knocks it out of the park with that, because I get to interact and work with so many different clients and so many different people and stuff like that. And so it's like we're making this like great music all the time. It's just this constant process of making great music. And sometimes it's throwaway songs, sometimes it's stuff that will make it on the record, but we're humming, and so it's kind of where I feel like I'm at era wise, where it's like, I feel like things are the band's together and it's working well, and I'm happy with that. And personally, it's the same way, like the band's together. And even my daughters, like we're doing great. And, they like me still, even though they're both in college and they want to be around me, which is a shock. But I think that's where I'm at. I'm kind of in that, like, not quite to the breakup stage where I'm sick of everybody in the world. Like, but I still love playing music, and it's like, we're all together and the band's going, like that's where I think.
Man, that sounds like that is the goal. It's you found alignment of the things that you were supposed to do and do them the way that they should be done to meet your needs and who you are, but also impact others around you positively. And you should be really proud of yourself, because that is work to get to this space. It was work for the Beatles to figure out what worked and what didn't in order to find that hum. And some incredible things came out of it, because I think that there's a peace to it. You're able to be at peace for a moment. You're not grinding as much because you have that alignment. So that's really amazing. I'm very happy for you, Craig. You deserve that.
Oh, thank you. It's funny when I think I am proud of myself, but it's always that thing of where, like, how it goes. You look in the mirror and you go, okay, are you going to be okay today? So that part I'm always there, but no, I really appreciate it. Thank you, Sarah. This has been great. I really have enjoyed it.
Craig, this has been wonderful. I am pissed that it is the end and we've gone over 2 minutes. Like, I really could keep talking to you for so long. And that wraps up today's special episode of Epochal Growth. I couldn't have asked for a better way to celebrate than by sharing Craig Crisler's thoughts on leadership and co-creating value in the workplace. We're so close to the end of season 1, and this episode has definitely set the tone for an inspiring finale. Thank you all for your continued support and for making this journey so meaningful. Be sure to join us for the final episode, and until then, stay curious and keep growing. I'm Sarah Caminiti. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.